everyone! It has been a very long time since I've actually sat down and filmed any sort of talking type video. I've been super busy the last couple of months, and I figured today I would actually show you what I've been working on. So if you didn't know, I spent the majority of the last couple of months building an Embo costume. He is a bounty hunter in the Star Wars universe, specifically in the Clone Wars. And yeah, that's what's been taking up most of my time. I did actually manage to do a live stream when I was painting some of the props, so if you're interested in kind of seeing some behind the scenes process, I will leave a link to that below and carded above. But normally, if you've been around on this channel for a while, you will know that I normally like to do kind of progress videos when I'm building things, and unfortunately it just didn't happen this time. But I still wanted to show you all of the finished products and actually talk about how they were made. Starting with the head. The head was the very first thing that I actually started on with this costume. The front part is majority 3D printed. There are some modifications around the eyes and on the respirator. There's some epoxy sculpt and some Warbler and foam and stuff just to make it more accurate. But the majority of this front half, I guess you could say, the 3D print kind of ends there, is 3D printed, and I actually printed that probably like a month before I actually started building anything else. The eyes, if you can see, are actually sunglass lenses that have been engraved with the appropriate lens detail, kind of his pupil idea. Those are interesting. I actually had to order multiple sunglass lenses to get the right color. I don't know if you can really see there. You can see there better. It's a very specific color. It is like a yellow lens that tints to orange, which unfortunately lots of polarized yellow sunglass lenses kind of tint to green. So took a few tries to get those right, but I'm very happy with how those turned out. And yeah, there are fans in here to keep me cool, and as far as the back of the head, like I said, this front area is all 3D printed, but this back section is entirely foam, and then kind of down here you can see it goes to fabric, this fabric cowl that my mom made. My mom is normally doing all of the soft parts, I do the templates, and we kind of work and figure out when those two things cross over. And so for this I decided that a fabric back cowl piece would probably be the most practical to have. It keeps it stretchy so I can actually get into this head, although it is an extraordinarily tight squeeze, but I can get into this. And then you have the two rings here, which are also foam. And an interesting thing that I had to do with this is because this is fabric and there is an unpainted part. I had to actually make the head match the fabric first. So this was painted in a very specific green color to kind of match this fabric, and then everything got the appropriate kind of scuffing and highlights and lowlights to make it all match as seamlessly as two different materials can be done. But yes, that is the head. This does live in my studio. Unfortunately, nothing else can because it is massive, which you will see in a second. But there's little green bean, as I like to call him. Now, something that is sort of directly related to the head is the actual body. Embo's arms are completely exposed, so I have this t-shirt with these green arms that were completely hand-painted to look like skin. All I end up using is like the cheap Michaels craft paint with some fabric medium mixed in. But yes, these sleeves are completely hand painted, so are the gloves that I will get to in a second. But yeah, it's just a t-shirt that makes me look like an alien. And seeing as I mentioned the gloves, might as well show you them next. These are like seriously one of my favorite parts of the costume, and they're so simple and it's really stupid. But Embo only has 3 fingers and a thumb. And he has extraordinarily long fingers, which I do not have. So these fingers have like extensions on them basically, which make my hands super long, and they're just a really cool like alien thing. Like they make me completely not look human. And again, these are completely hand painted to match all the details in the Clone Wars series, and yeah, they're just super cool and really alien, and yeah, like I said, really simple, and I'm way too amused with them, but they're very fun to wear. And the extensions are Warbler and foam, so it means they're hard, so I can actually pick things up. Pencil case, yeah, so I can pick things up, hold things, high five kids, whatever I need to do in these with no problem. Something kind of boring, but it was in the same bag as the gloves. This is the armband. It's leather. It's a single piece, but it ends up looking like two, and it just velcros to my shirt when I actually have it on. Now, literally the only other soft part basically of this costume was the skirt, which my mom, like I mentioned, she's the sewer, does all of this work. I just do templates. Yes, but here's the beautiful skirt that the scarf is actually attached to. It is all one piece just for ease reasons. Clone Wars is obviously an animated series, and when I decided to do Embo, one of the first things I kind of thought of or was planning on doing was, you know, how do you translate an animated character into something that would look like it belonged in a Star Wars movie or just, you know, a live action universe. And one of the first things that I just insisted on was having the details of the scarf and skirt embroidered. So my mom took forever and a half to do all of this crazy detail that I asked her to do, but it looks awesome. And then it is also hand painted in between to give it that animated texture. But yeah, this is just a really, really awesome looking scarf that me holding it up is definitely not going to do it justice. And same with the detail that is actually on the skirt, all embroidered and really, really beautiful and awesome looking. The skirt is also completely hand painted and distressed, although you can't really see it. It is pretty subtle. It does have some like dirt marks on it, and also the like burn holes and cuts and all of that kind of stuff that is on Embo's skirt. Now I do want to say, Embo is actually an extraordinarily comfortable costume to wear compared to what I'm used to wearing. You know, most of the body, it's pretty free-flowing, there's not a lot of constricting armor, but the one thing is he has a ton of massive costume pieces. The one thing in particular is the hat. The hat is a very famous and well-recognizable part of Embo's design, and the hat is so massive that we had to make its own bag for it. And here is the hat itself. It is completely constructed in foam. It has a magnet in the center to help it attach to the helmet, just because obviously I can't feel where it is. It also helps keep it lined up in the center. But yes, this thing is massive and super cool. The good thing is it's not extremely heavy, because I do have to wear this for fairly significant periods of time, but yeah, massive, massive hat. I will actually include a picture because one of my favorite like behind the scenes pictures of this whole building process was actually this hat. I will put it up here, but it is a picture of the base color versus just adding highlights and lowlights, like literally two paint colors to the other side, and it completely transformed the hat. This was actually templated from a Captain America shield, which is a kind of a cool little behind the scenes thing, but the Captain America shield actually isn't large enough for this hat. Everything was scaled to the head, so that's why, you know, everything is based on the head dimensions, basically. But yes, here's my super large hat that I wish I could have in my studio, but clearly not going to happen. The massive armor pieces are obviously super cool and impressive, but most of the time it is the detail and smaller, insignificant costume pieces that take the most time. One of those kind of random weird things that you literally don't really see or pay attention to are the shoes. Now, these were Toms that got completely recovered in a particular fabric that matches the leg wraps, which are here, and then these kind of attach and they all look like a boot. But yeah, these are completely covered shoes that I did. They were green, they are now brown obviously. The sole I actually didn't need to cover because it was perfect, it was super flat. It is painted though, and then the toe piece got added as well to match the details on Embo. And not only are these shoes covered, they are also completely painted. So where's some fabric? So the shoe is normally like that light color, so all of the darkness was hand painted on by me to give it the appropriate coloring and texture that the animated model has. And I know I briefly held one of these up, but there's also these leg wraps, which again also hand painted and made out of the same fabric, and they do attach to the shoes like I said, so it does end up looking like a boot, since it's kind of hard to tell if Embo's shoes are supposed to be boots or shoes with leg wraps or whatever. They look right, and that's what matters. The smallest piece of armor on the entire costume is the vambrace, which again I ended up painting the majority of in that live stream. But this actually has lights in it, LEDs. It's just an LED strip that I've been using constantly for costumes that I cut up and solder 9-volt to, if you can kind of see in there. Very simple setup, nothing fancy. It just has a piece of plexiglass with some color changing film that you normally use for photography that I bought a pack of and have again also been using to change the color and make the LEDs the appropriate color in various costumes that I've built. So yeah, it's completely made out of foam other than the plexiglass that is the light kind of display area, but the rest is foam, and yeah, painted again with the cheap craft paint as everything is. And then you have the belts. These were again completely handmade between my mom and I. I do like the finishing leatherwork things and she does the sewing part. But the main thing that took the time on these was the belt buckles. One of the most annoying things in the Star Wars universe to me is the belt buckles because they are not normal. So this one is the belt that goes like around my waist, and this is a modified parachute clip. So one of those clips, I don't know if you can really tell because it is pretty covered, but you know, the ones that you squeeze on the side, sometimes it's called a parachute clip, some people like to call it a side release clip. But a modified one of those to look like this belt buckle, and then some pieces of aluminum on the side here to give it the appropriate look that Embo has. And then again, the belts dyed and modified, I don't know what you want, finished belts, dyed, you know, edges finished, all of that stuff I did. There's also some Velcro to keep the two belts together. The second belt, which is here, again, completely handmade. This belt buckle was just covered in a piece of foam then I cut out the appropriate area there and then covered it in Warbler so it's nice and hard and also very smooth. So that it actually looks like metal. And then the other fancy thing on this belt are these like blaster bullet things. It's not entirely sure what they are. You see them on a lot of bounty hunters in the Star Wars universe. Sometimes they're like shotgun bullets, like there's a lot of different things that they could be, but those again completely handmade. The small leather pieces also hand done by me. They are wood doweling that has epoxy sculpt on the ends to create that shape, and then hand painted, and they are attached using some tiny screws. The second smallest piece of armor that I had to build was the vest. Again, none of these have names, so this is just what I call the vest. This is actually a mixture of hard and soft goods. Pretty early on, I discovered and decided on the vest being hard. So this is foam that is covered in Warbler to give it that hard armor look. If you look at the pictures, lots of people have made it soft, but just looking at the pictures, I would estimate that it's probably supposed to be made out of something like leather. It definitely looks rigid though because of the weathering on it. So the front and back plate are the same Warbler covered foam, and then the sides are painted leather to match the vest pieces themselves. They also have these aluminum rings around them. They're flat aluminum that I bent and nearly destroyed my hands on bending to kind of create that detail look. Again, random Star Wars hardware and clip stuff drives me nuts, but luckily this was a fairly easy thing to construct, and yeah, it just does up with some Velcro. It has some straps that go on me, and yeah, not as impressive as some things, but I'm really happy with how these turned out. The weathering is really nice on them, and I'm also really happy that the paint liked the leather enough and actually matches the rest of the vest perfectly. Now, it is a matter of debate whether you would consider the hat or this next piece the largest piece of armor in this costume. But this is the armored collar. It is a giant, giant piece of foam. It's basically a ring of foam that is bent in half and then has this soft foam collar on it. Again, it's kind of up for debate what this is attached to. It is the same color as the vest though, but for ease it's attached to my armor. But yeah, as you can see, absolutely massive. Again, this is completely hand painted to perfectly, as best as I could, match the texturing on the actual model in the Clone Wars. And then, yeah, then you have all of the scuffing and detailing of this armored collar. There is actually like 7 or 8 shades of silver on this thing to give it all of the weathering that's appropriate. As you can see, there's like highlights, lowlights, scuffing, there's all of the line work, that is the separated armor plates on this. Right now mine don't separate, but that might be something that I modify in the future to actually have these all separate. At one point they somewhat were because of fitting, but we'll see where that goes in the future. But yes, that is the armored collar. Also has this brooch detail in the front, which is really cool, and then one of the red bounty symbols that Embo has on different things. Now that was actually it for the costume portion of Embo, but it's not the last thing that I built, and in my opinion I might have saved the best for last. Because the final and definitely craziest part of Embo's costume is the bowcaster, which won't even fit on screen. Like, I am so far back in this studio. This is the bowcaster closed up. As you can see from the front, completely closed, but it does completely open up to be this monster of a crazy weapon, which is so cool to walk around in. I'm not sure if I would consider this my largest prop that I've ever built. Technically speaking, the Electro Ripper is longer, but this is like just space-wise between the bows going out and the back and the length and everything. This thing is huge, which is also why I had to make it separating. So everything kind of holds itself in place by magnets. The majority of the bowcaster is foam, but some of the more delicate areas are covered in Warbler, like this rangefinder piece here, as well as the handle, just because I have to grip it on that, this end piece because it's obviously in pretty prime knocking area. The end is also covered in Warbler, and then the bow pieces themselves. Then there's some Chicago screws to actually make it be able to swivel, and everything like staying in place again with more magnets. But yes, this thing did take quite a long time to do, but I am super, super happy with how it turned out. And yeah, it's clearly pretty crazy, but very impressive and cool to be carrying around. And that is actually it for Embo. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know lots of you guys are interested in kind of the costumes and props that I build, so that is definitely why I wanted to do this video, because I unfortunately could not do kind of the behind the scenes process like I did the last time. So hopefully that kind of went over everything. Of course, if you have any questions about kind of my process or any specific piece in the costume, definitely leave that in the comments below. I would be more than happy to kind of answer and help you out in any kind of way that I can regarding any of these costume pieces. But that is everything. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.